Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A videos. This is season 14, episode 21. Do you want to tell people what they're looking at if they're watching the video right now?
Sure. So season 14 has been our season of previewing who we expect to be the challenge character. We expect the challenge character in a couple of days to be Arkham Killer Croc. And when we preview them, we usually preview them as the star. And being the star in the world where Tendu Totem exists, then that usually means making them a specialist. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case here. And here's a big part of the reason why. So Arkham Killer Croc Special 2 is half damage because it does damage over time. So the maximum damage you can do from Special 2 is 48,000. And you get damage over time for 6 seconds. But that 40,000 is instead of 96,000. Mm-hmm. So we can see that because somebody else with similar base stats at Elite 7 level 50. Mm-hmm. Blackest Night Hawkgirl has the same stat, and her Special 2 does 96,000. And why that matters is because if you're going to be investing in that amount of making them the specialist, right? Mm-hmm. Then it's an opportunity cost. Somebody else won't be getting it, and the amount of damage you're going to get from that is very unlikely to knock out an opponent in multiplayer.
Yeah.
So somebody else, say for example, like we're demonstrating here, Arkham Knight Catwoman has a damage reduction because of her damage over time, but it's only 25% reduction instead of 50% reduction. Mm-hmm. And her damage over time is way more powerful. So we have, yes, fallen victim to the temptation of using Arkham Killer Croc as a support character. And in this context, I think it works really well. You've got Arkham Knight Batgirl, who will make any Arkham character better, and she does. You've got Arkham Knight Catwoman as the main damage dealer. And you've got, even though we don't have Hawkgirl like we normally do to improve our tag in and tag out speed, we don't need it because Arkham Knight Batgirl makes both of them better and can save both of them. And Arkham Knight Catwoman does way more damage, both in the actual Special 2 and in her damage over time. Mm-hmm. So she's better than Arkham Killer Croc. And I don't know that there's much value in Arkham Killer Croc, so we've given him the Claw of Horus to Shatter Gear in case we need it. His special one's not bad. His special one, I think, is in the case of where you've got fights against Blackest Night Flash team, his special one plays better because it does no damage over time. And so you're getting full value of the special one, and you're not also triggering the Blackest Night Flash team's passive of giving them health and giving them power. Because that's wild. When you see that, what happens, you really get a sense. Like last week, Bounty Hunter Lobo, you could see that his damage over time was negligible.
Yeah.
Against the Black Knight Flash team, was doing basically nothing. It was not having an impact on the fight, really. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there we go. Do you want to get into our first question this week?
Sure. Yeah. It's an interesting one. I think, and the answer is not going to be the obvious, but
yeah. Okay, so this comes from Darth Dan 3983, and they say, second, I don't know if there was a first comment I didn't see.
Yeah, I don't think there was.
They say, second, what's wrong with having Charlie Kirk on his hat? The man was murdered, and he's paying his respects. I'm confused why you felt that was wrong. And so you have a lot of notes for what you want to say. Yeah. The first thing I want to say is that this is not the first time we've talked about Charlie Kirk.
Sure.
And to summarize sort of some of the things that we've said and the thoughts that we've had.
Well, even before we get to that, though, I want to point out that there's a bunch of sort of rhetorical sort of pivots that are being used here. And one of them is that we didn't say it was wrong having Charlie Kirk on his hat. We're saying it reflects very poorly on him, on Blake Trinan. But anyways, that's a whole different thing, right? Like, do whatever you want.
But our stance, right, on what happened, that the shooting that we've talked about previously, is that I do not think that it is in general a good thing for a society, for a republic, to have like extrajudicial killings of somebody when you disagree with them, right? So the event itself, I do not think was a thing that, broadly speaking, should happen, right? And I think that is sort of, regardless of what your politics are, there is very few cases, especially when somebody is not a direct political operator themselves, right? And is more of a pundit, there's very few to maybe no cases in which that should be the standard operating procedure, right? So the event itself.
Right. It was a bad thing. If we want to be simple about it, it was a bad thing. We're not saying it was good that it happened. We're saying it was a bad thing.
So that's one thing.
I agree with that.
A second thing is that I think that, like, I find Charlie Kirk's personal politics, right, and the things that he advocated for, the world that he helped create by existing in it as a political figure, as somebody making content, I think the world was worse off for how I want the world to look with Charlie Kirk in it as an operator. Right. And that is entirely separate from whether or not I think he should have been killed, right? Those things are both true simultaneously, right?
Sure.
And then the third thing is, what is the outcome or the fallout from something happening, right? So we've talked about the United Healthcare CEO shooting, right? And there's not a lot of clarity on exactly how that impacts the world. Knock-on effects and second-order effects are really, really hard to predict, right? But there is something to be said for, does this make the world more like the world I want to live in or less like the world I want to live in, separate from the event itself? Because I'm not encouraging anybody else to take those actions. I'm not taking those actions myself, right? But the question is, how does this change things, right? And so one of the things we're talking about in the wake of the healthcare CEO shooting was that there is a world in which CEOs feel a greater sense of accountability to the general public, right? And it changes their behavior in a way that ultimately, you know, I'm not a utilitarian. I'm not just like the number of lives saved, the number of lives improved is the only thing worth considering. But there's a world in which, from a total utilitarian perspective, it does improve the world more than it ultimately takes away from the world, right? And whether or not, you know, I as not being the person at the lever, right, all I can do is look at how the world changes and whether or not I think that in the long tail of things improved after that or got worse after that, independently from the event. And unfortunately, in the case of Charlie Kirk, I think it seems to be more unambiguously that the world is also getting worse in response to the event, right? That the event should have happened, that there is no sort of political reckoning, there's no shifting towards values or ideas that I value more strongly, right? And the event itself is something that I didn't think should happen. So just for the unambiguous perspective of at least myself, but I assume I'm speaking at least in part for you. Because I think I'm saying relatively, you know, unambiguous, hard to argue with things, right? You might disagree with my individual opinions, but in terms of the impact that it's had on the world, I think it should not be a thing that happens in general. I don't think it should have happened here in specific. And I don't think that there's really any math that I'm able to do or any way I'm able to look at it that this event has been sort of good for the world for the things that I value, right?
So that's a good summary. I'm just going to put in a plug here because you made me think of something when you talked about utilitarian. So I'm reading a book. It's Inventing the Renaissance by Ada Palmer. Super interesting. I'm at the spot, like I haven't been able to read it because it's a big book. And I've been coming back to it every once in a while and reading chunks. And she's at a part where she's talking about ethics. And that it's wild to me that for the longest time there was virtue ethics, there's deontological ethics, and that the utilitarian ethics was not invented until Machiavelli came along and really made it a thing.
Interesting.
It's neat. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's wild to me.
So I think that's sort of like all the background context that I can, you know, there's more we could say, but like the baseline of how I feel about what happened is all of that stuff. And also, I did not like Charlie Kirk or anything that he stood for in terms of his politics, his ideas, the way that he wanted the world to be and the way that I want the world to be have very, very little in common. Yeah, and I think I want to get into this a little bit later, but it's hard to break down because there's so many levels to this question and that I want to talk about. But part of it was there's lots of bigots. The really problematic bigots are the ones that actually encourage more violence. So that's a problem. Oh, the other thing about the healthcare, what's neat is the healthcare guy who killed the CEO. He was up on terrorist charges. And his defense counsel allegedly killed the CEO.
Well,
we're talking about Luigi Mangione. We're not talking about, because there is a guy who killed the healthcare CEO. No, there is a person who did it, right? We don't know if Luigi is the guy who did it. He's currently the guy who's on trial for it.
But there was his defense lawyers made a point of arguing against the terrorism charges that were brought against him, and they were successful because he never published any manifesto. All the details about what was on the bullets was publicized. Like if it hadn't been reported,
Yeah.
nobody would have known. He made no effort to actually show people this. So it was pretty successful, I think. Anyways, so breaking down the original comment from Darth Dan.
Should I read it again just so that we're anchored? Okay. So, what's wrong with having Charlie Kirk on his hat? The man was murdered and he's paying his respects. I'm confused why you felt that was wrong.
So, the problems with the question are a couple. One I've already pointed out is that we didn't say there was anything wrong. You do what you do, right? You stand for who you stand for. I think it reflects poorly on Trinan, but the statement itself is that it's a bad faith statement, right? So, if you know enough about Charlie Kirk, enough to say, hey, listen, he was murdered, he's just paying his respects, without knowing any of the background about why there are people who like him and why there are people who didn't like him and all that kind of discussion, I think that's obviously sort of a rhetorical device that was popularized called sea lining. And I think this is really neat because there's not a lot of... It's when something... Sorry, let me take a step back. It's when there's something new, when somebody's able to point at something and describe it in a way that nobody's done before, even though it's happened before. I feel like that's really kind of neat. And so David Malky does a comic called Wonder Mark. And he was the first person that put this name that became sort of popular for this kind of thing. And if you look on Wikipedia, it says, sea lioning is a type of trolling or harassment that consists of pursuing people with relentless requests for evidence, often tangential or previously addressed, which we did with Charlie Kirk, while maintaining a pretense of civility and sincerity. And quotes, I'm just trying to have a debate, and feigning ignorance of the subject matter. It may take the form of incessant bad faith invitations to engage in debate, which I think Charlie Kirk used to do, and has been likened to a denial of service attack targeted at human beings. The term originated with a 2014 strip of the webcomic Wonder Mark by David Malky, which The Independent called the most apt description of Twitter you'll ever see.
And do you want to maybe put a link to that in the description?
Yeah, I'm going to put a link to the comic. And I want to just at least point out the idea because I think it makes the discussion more interesting. So there's a couple, because David Malky, I think what he did was he took... old pictures and he would cut them and clip and paste them together into new sort of cartoons and give captions to them, right? So that was his style for Wonder Mark. So there's a couple that are sitting on a little mini train, like the locomotive part. The woman says, I don't mind most marine mammals, but sea lions? Oh, I could do without sea lions. Don't say that too loud. Or don't say that out loud, the man goes. And the sea lion appears. Pardon me, I couldn't help but overhear. Now you've done it. I would like to have a civil conversation about your statement. Would you mind showing me evidence of any negative thing any sea lion has ever done to you? And the woman goes, go away. There's no need to raise your voice. I'm right here. I'm just curious if you have any sources to back up your opinion.
And I'll say between panels here, the setting is changing, sort of indicating that the sea lion is following them.
Right. And now the woman's in bed. You're in my house. And the sea lion goes, you made a statement in public for all to hear. Are you unable to defend the statements you make? Or simply unwilling to have a reasoned discussion? And then, told you, dude, sea lions. I have been unfailingly polite, and you two have been nothing but rude. I'm trying to eat breakfast. Very well, we shall resume in an hour. Yeah, so I guess... As a rhetorical technique, though, the good news is it doesn't work nearly as well when you're doing it with somebody who's actually needs a source for content. We've been doing this for years. It doesn't actually bother us every once in a while to have this kind of discussion because it's interesting to us. And sometimes I like thinking out loud to really crystallize the sort of, like, I have a gut reaction, right? Like, I've always got sort of an intuitive reaction, and sometimes I have to think it through properly before I can really articulate why it might be, or maybe even consider changing my position.
And this isn't really an even platform, right? We kind of get to talk for as long as we want. Then you get to leave a comment that, you know, we're not in the habit of deleting comments, but we have no qualms about it if somebody's saying something.
I don't think we have for years.
No, it's not just if somebody would disagree with us, right? We're not, we don't care, right? If somebody doesn't agree with us. But I think the interesting thing here, right, is because we can go back to the initial statements, which is I think there's a lot of things that you can say, right?
Sure.
About what happened to Charlie Kirk. And there's a lot of things that I think are fair and reasonable to say, right?
Right.
When you are memorializing him specifically as a person, and the more publicly and the more specifically you talk about Charlie Kirk as an individual, right? The more you are aligning yourself with the things that he believed when he was alive.
Sure.
It is not reasonable to say that somebody who is memorializing Charlie Kirk, who is, aligning themselves with Charlie Kirk, right, is only speaking to the last moments of his life, right? And the big thing that happened right at the end of his life.
Right.
And so it is fair to say, this political violence shouldn't happen. An example that I think, or a comparison would be, it is fine to say men's mental health matters, right? It is fine to acknowledge that there are specific ways in which the world that we currently are in is difficult for men, right?
Sure.
The expectations of the patriarchy that create issues that are unique to men that deserve attention and consideration.
Sure.
That is not an unreasonable statement to make. What somebody said immediately before it matters way more. And the problem is that statement is often made when women, or, mostly women, but women, gender nonconforming people, right, are talking about their own struggles, right? And if your response to that is men's mental health matters, then I think you're being a bad person, right? I don't, not like dispositionally, maybe not always, but I think in that moment, you're being a dick, right?
Yeah.
So, I think it is fair to make a statement about political violence. It is fair to even reference Charlie Kirk when you're talking about political violence. It's a recent example, right? This stuff shouldn't be happening. It's stuff that I am absolutely willing to say. But if you just say, if you just write Charlie Kirk on your hat, that is not just you saying, I don't think political violence should happen. That is not just you, mourning a murder victim. That is you saying, I'm on that guy's side, right? It's a different statement. And so that speaks to what you believe in, and that speaks to how we're going to feel about you on the basis of what you believe in.
So, and there's a really an apt and recent analogy. So there was another member of the Los Angeles Dodgers who was away from his team, and as it turns out, he was left off the World Series roster and was unavailable to play because his daughter was dying, and she passed away during the World Series. And so when the pitchers, or the players for the Los Angeles Dodgers had that player's number on their hat, they were standing in support and in solidarity. And when the Jays the Jays relief pitchers did that, they were doing the same thing. And there's no ambiguity there, right? There's no sort of way to interpret that poorly. They are showing their support. This is what's on their mind. This is what they're thinking about. In stark contrast to somebody putting Charlie Kirk on their baseball cap. So here's the thing, right? Like I said earlier, there's lots of bigots. They do lots of stuff. The key was his acceptance, his very public acceptance of gun violence, and a very strong willingness to make people angry.
Well, there's lots of stuff. I mean, he's made comments that were like racist, transphobic, homophobic. In general, he is right wing, and he's right wing relatively across the board. I could, pull up and find specific things I disagree with him about, but it's a lot. It's most of it.
Yeah, and so it's that final step, right? It's that sort of the potential for. There's a really cool term for this. It's called stochastic violence. And let me just read the Wikipedia the definition. Stochastic terrorism.
Well, both of those things. So you're reading the definition for stochastic terrorism, though, here.
Stochastic terrorism is an analytic description used in scholarship and counterterrorism to describe a mass-mediated process in which hostile public rhetoric, repeated and amplified across communication platforms, elevates the statistical risk of ideologically motivated violence by unknown individuals, even without direct coordination or explicit orders. And I think that's describes this perfectly, right? Yeah. So what we're seeing is that there's just more violence. It's not like you have to. It's like having to make that connection that's so perfectly direct in order to prove that it's a bad thing. I think that's a mistake. I mean, it's the way people used to talk about racism, right? Yeah. That if you didn't say, "Haha, I am racist," before you did something, that it wouldn't count. And for a time, that might have been a useful definition, only because people were much more willing to be blatantly racist. But then that understanding has shifted a little bit when we look at some of the institutions and the power structures that are rooted in racism, and talking about unconscious racism, which is still a thing, because the people that are smart enough to avoid consequences are never going to say, haha, I am this whatever type of bigot before they do something bigoted.
Yeah, so I think it is fair to say that Charlie Kirk has fractionally, to some extent, contributed to violence, right?
Sure.
When we talk about the rise of right-wing rhetoric, when you look at, statistics on, like, hate crimes, right? After Donald Trump became president, when you look at the way that certain political modes of thought becoming normalized and being in the Overton window changes the behavior of people with those politics, right? I think... and I don't know the math, and that's part of the problem, is that it's impossible to say. And it's another thing we talked about with the United Healthcare CEO, right? Which is that he, with the decisions that he was making to deny people healthcare, right? Him and his company were, there was violence as a result, right? People were denied healthcare. People had their quality of life reduced. People were allowed to die, right? And we don't consider that them being killed by the healthcare CEO, or maybe I shouldn't say we. I would say that generally that's not the verbiage that you use to refer to it, right? But that people died as a direct result of decisions made, and in some cases, results that were either later litigated or in active litigation, right? There's a question to whether they were allowed to make some of the decisions that they were making that reduce people's quality of life, right? Both on sort of a moral level and potentially on a legal level, and so. Charlie Kirk is part of a political machine that results in violence, right? It's not its only goal. It's not maybe...
Well, it's not the goal that they state.
Well, and I can't speak to Charlie Kirk's intentions, and I'm not interested in speaking to his intentions, right? That it is a machine...
That would be virtue ethics.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't know, and you can't know.
Which is the biggest problem with virtue ethics, right? Because if you have to know what's going on in somebody's head, then it makes it harder to actually be judging the rightness or wrongness of something.
And to a greater extent, it almost doesn't matter, right? He is in a position where he should be able to recognize the responsibilities and the potential knock-on effects of what he's doing. He has responsibility as a person with a platform and as a person espousing political belief. And there is I attribute violence to the way that Charlie Kirk lived his life. The actions that he took caused violence to happen towards other people, right?
That wouldn't have happened.
That wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Right.
And the entire thing that makes it difficult to talk about this is that it is hard to impossible to do that math, right? I don't know. It's not like I can say, I think Charlie Kirk is responsible for the loss of X number of lives due to, Y circumstance, right? That he's 5 hate crime related deaths would not have happened otherwise, right? So I can't tally up that ledger.
But it feels like the fact that he was killed the way he was, there's maybe not a direct line to it, but there's at least some sort of connection that the world where it happened was a world where it was more likely to happen because of the things he said. It was a consequence, maybe not direct, maybe indirect, of those choices.
Yeah. I mean, my opinion, and this is non-data driven, and you can agree or disagree with me, but I believe that Charlie Kirk is probably responsible for more violence against other people than the amount of violence that was enacted against him, right? In aggregate.
Yeah.
And again, you can agree or disagree with that. That's not based off of, hard math or figures.
Right.
But that is a belief that I have.
Sure.
Yeah. So do you have any other thoughts? I think the idea of stochastic violence it's an important one to bring up in cases like this. So I think that was a...
Yeah, and to me, that's the biggest difference between one person saying bigoted things and somebody else saying bigoted things, is their impact. And how the ripples that happen when one of the things that they do or says lands. Yeah, but again, David Malky, that's it's wild to me. Every once in a while, there is those statements, right? Like what is it? To find out that there's certain things that phrases or things that we know or the way we understand things that were created by people that are still living today that you still have a chance to interact with, that like I was able to order books directly from David Malky. I got him to do a sketch. And so who else? What's the one that says Hitler? What's the
what?
That every argument, if it's maintained long enough, will eventually have a mention of Hitler.
I don't know.
There's a rule like that. That guy's still alive.
There's lots of stuff. The idea that core memories was coined by Inside Out, and that bucket list was coined by the movie. Or My Sweet Summer Child was Game of Thrones, right? There's all these things that...
Yeah, I mean, it was used before, but it was, I think, popularized for sure. Like, people weren't aware
No,
of
I think My Sweet Summer Child was specifically Game of Thrones.
No, it was used... But, like, I've seen people doing that kind of research, and they dug around and found that mention, but it wasn't used quite the same way. Mm-hmm. So it's just... Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but, like, if it theoretically existed versus, like, that is the reason why people are saying it. Like, there was no, context. There was no, like, history, or there's no, like, thread of connection between... Yeah. The original uses and like the current usage. It's all from Game of Thrones, right? That's the originating point of like the sort of cultural root of it. Yeah.
And Joe Walton's been responsible for a few things too, like I wish it just occurs to me, but I can't think off the top of my head. There's a couple. The Suck Fairy.
Mostly talk about
I love that. The Suck Fairy is a great concept. But there was also other things. I'll think of it, and maybe I'll add that to the description if I can remember. Mm-hmm. But it's neat, but these are people that not only can you know, like some of them we do know. It's wild. Mm-hmm. Anyways,
yeah. So I think that is about as complete of an articulation of our answer to this question. Do we want to try to re-summarize it at all?
Nah.
So that's
I think it's all there. We'll have the links to the cartoon. And I mean, the Wikipedia stuff, everybody can look up. There's lots of reading that you can do on the ideas. They're pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe we'll do one or two more, depending on how quick they are.
Yeah.
So the next one comes from Yuki Yotori, RI6VO. And they say, wait, is this the same guys who made, the same two guys who made the Survivor Tips playlist?
We made a Survivor Tips playlist. I don't know if it's the one that you mentioned.
If it's the Survivor Tips playlist,
I mean, we
probably
made,
us.
All right, so it's fun because we made that like almost right after Survivor started, when it was introduced. So every once in a while, when I don't remember when stuff started, you know how I look it up?
Your own.
I look it up on our playlist to see when we actually addressed it, and I can get a feel for... Because I remember like early on, we were playing a lot of Survivor. We still are, but we were playing a lot of Survivor. Yeah. And there were just things that really were obvious. Like, it's usually we don't have that much to say, but there were so many different things that we did a bunch of short videos, and we were trying something new. I mean, way before YouTube pushed their shorts, we were trying something new by doing shorts and seeing if that worked for us. And for that particular thing, it did. Mm-hmm. And we're in a completely different direction now, not doing shorts, because we're doing longs. We're doing longs. Yeah. And it's the thing. We're not for one or the other, but it's just how we did stuff. So you know what, if you're hearing this, Yuki Otori, maybe let us know, give us a link to the playlist, and we can tell you for those guys, but it should be pretty obvious because it'll be on our channel.
Yeah, that's true. You'd be able to figure that out, actually. If you got to the playlist, you'd know. Yeah. You'd have your question answered. Yeah. It's probably us. Yeah. Okay. One more. This one comes from NotAGamer95. They say, was searching for you guys playing MetaHuman Flash, but I enjoyed the conversation even more. How do you guys have such intellectual conversations? I love your son's vocabulary, talking about me, I assume, to you. Sure. Because I'm your son. Unless they think it's the other direction.
I guess it's hard to tell now.
It's an old enough video, though, that whatever. It doesn't matter what this person was thinking exactly. One of us. By the way, how do you have
It wasn't that old. It was season 9.
Yeah, but like that's years ago.
Sure.
By the way, how do you have such deep thoughts on things? I want to inbuilt that in me as well. Do you guys read a lot of books or something?
Yeah, I think there's a few assumptions here, but I think it's easier to sound smart with just a couple things. One is you don't talk in absolutes, right? Like when you're talking in absolutes, I think it's just easier to be wrong. And the more wrong you are, the dumber you sound. Mm-hmm. And the other part is recognizing what your limitations are. And I think that applies to not just this, but so many things in life. Like I work in a profession where there's a lot of how should I say it? There's a lot of interprofessional relationships, and you rely on other people for lots of stuff. And there's lots of stuff that you can do yourself. And the more you do yourself, the more you're able to do yourself, the more capable you actually are. But the better you are at recognizing what your limitations are, the more capable you actually are, because you can take care of the stuff you do, and that you are unlikely to be overseeing failure because you didn't take on more than your ability.
Yeah. So I have a couple thoughts on this, which is, I think one of the things that you're talking about, right, where you're not speaking absolutes, I think one of the most useful ways for me that I do this is it's like source monitoring, which is where am I getting information from, right?
Yeah.
And like for me, having a background in some amount of like science, right, like my undergraduate degree, and just in general being interested in sort of science, right? Science communication is very different from other types of communication. Like communication in business, especially, or like sales, right, is often based off of selling something as hard as you can, making something seem as good as you possibly can,
Right.
Without lying, right? And it's just sort of getting somebody through the door. Your goal is to be convincing, right?
Sure.
Whereas I think good science communication, your goal is to be accurate, more so than you are convincing or sensationalizing.
So a combination of accurate and easy to understand.
Yeah. So if you're doing a good job, you will sacrifice something sounding more interesting or engaging in order for it to be more true, right?
Sure.
And so in general, I have optimized what I say to be more accurate as opposed to more, not incendiary, but like to make you feel like it's a bigger statement than it is. I would rather be precise,
yeah,
as opposed to overstating something and being wrong by accident in order to make it more interesting, right? If I can help it.
And that's probably more important in science than other things too, because of the nature of what science is. That there are changes, so that when you say something, there is a higher risk that you're going to end up sounding at some point in the future like you were not so smart in the past, because science by its nature moves.
Well, and one of the core things with especially scientific research is that you find a broad phenomenon you want to learn about, and you test it very, very narrowly, right? So you want to learn something about how human cognition works, and you test a very specific test, right? Like you use a like computer memory game to try to test how human memory works, right? And you test it on 100 people, and you test it in a very specific way, and then you don't at the end of that test say, I have figured out how all of human cognition works across all contexts, right? You want to build a connection between those 2 points. The term is operationalization, which is how you are specifically testing and what way you are defining your variables. So you want to learn about human cognition, you want to learn about memory, you want to learn about working memory, whatever, and then you narrow it down until you have one specific thing, which is like a program that you have built, and it's something very specific, and you hope that there's a relationship between what you've built and something broader, but you can only really test exactly what you've built, right? And that's part of the point of replication in science, is that then other people will find other ways of building things that should theoretically test the same thing. And if all those different operationalizations, if all those different modules all give you the same result, then the more of a sense you get that, oh, this is the result that I found works across context. It doesn't need to be the specific computer program. It doesn't need to be this specific circumstance. It's still the pattern still works. And you sort of learn about that big nebulous thing by a bunch of specific small things. So I think intrinsically with scientific communication, there's the risk of, for any given thing, making a statement about the really large nebulous thing you're looking at, and making a statement that is much, much stronger than you should be, because you are really testing something very narrow. But I think in general, my sort of moral philosophy is I want to be somebody that is trusted when I say things. And that's not to say that I don't think that anybody should ever double check me or look into it, but my hope among my friends is, and this is something that I've externalized, I've verbalized to people, is that I want somebody, when they hear a piece of information from me that I feel confident about and I express with confidence, that they it's not that they don't think I could be wrong, but that you assume, hopefully correctly, that I have looked into it enough that that confidence is earned. That if you were to go and look for that piece of information yourself, that you would feel like I had at least done my due diligence, that you understand why I'm confident, that you believe it, and that for, a good portion of people, that I've done the amount of work that you would do verifying it for yourself, so that you can kind of take my opinion at face value and not assume that it's coming from nowhere, that I've made it up, that it's not based off of anything. And so the way that I do that, and the most important part is, because I have opinions and I have things that I'm wrong about, but like we've done this week, right? I try to take care when I don't feel like there's a scientific backing, when I don't think that there's an informational backing, when I'm sharing something that's just an opinion, that you know it, right? That I say, I think we should do this, and here's why. This is the information, this is the basis. And sometimes it's just, I just pulled it out of my butt, right? It's not based off of anything. And I want you to know that. So when I don't say that there's an assumed care there. And so to me, that's like one of the most important things, is because I know people who will just kind of pull information out of thin air, and you won't know unless you check with them.
Right.
And so that's one way that I can talk about concretely that I care about, that it matters to me, and it's something that I do on purpose, that I think improves how I communicate information with other people for specifically what I value.
I'm going to take a step back, though, to one of the first things you said was that your interest, right? Part of the question implies, how do you have intellectual conversations? And I didn't say explicitly, but I'm flipping it and reframing it as, it's not so much that the conversation is intellectual, it's not so much that we sound smart, it's that I think that we don't sound dumb. Right? So that it's more important, if it's important to you to sound smart, clearly what's going to undermine you is if you say things that are not smart. And that means that when you talk about stuff, if you're interested in things, you're going to read up on it. It doesn't even, or look at it. You don't have to read a lot of books, but if you have interest, follow them. There's never been a world where it's been so easy to follow up on questions that you have and get real answers at the moment when you're ready to learn them. And then when you don't know something, if you're in a conversation with somebody, you don't know something, then you just need to listen. And this is, I think, the underlying sort of failure of mansplaining, and why it's such a problem is because it's a perfect example of people stepping into areas, talking about stuff that they don't actually know, with people who actually know better, because they are too bigoted to recognize that, hey, often that a woman will have more expertise than them. And not in like a secret way, but like in a really obvious way, that they have more expertise than them. And they feel like that something that they happen to have read that they are remembering poorly and can't articulate properly is better than this expert in front of them. Yeah.
And I think one of the other sort of easiest things is, the person talks about reading a lot. I think reading is part of it. I think in general, your media consumption does really influence how many things you can speak to. And I think it's something that you kind of have to want, right? And be interested in, separate from like just wanting to sound smart. You have to want to learn, right? And I think because you can learn how to speak better, sort of independently of how much you know.
Sure.
Right? You can learn facts about any given domain, right? Independently of how generally worldly or well-read you are. So it's learning things that are more likely to be relevant in your day-to-day, right? And in the world around you, which is a mix of things that are just more relevant to the real world, and also things that are more relevant to the people that you're talking to specifically, and the places that you find yourself. But I think, there's always a more educational and less educational way of spending your time, right? And I think you and me are just both kind of big nerds, right? So I'm happy watching a science video. I'm happy learning about something really nerdy, right? There's a YouTuber named Technology Connections who makes a bunch of videos about like household appliances and different like sort of personal living stuff and like old tech, like VCRs and all that stuff. And I find his stuff really interesting. And, most of it never comes up in my day to day, but then sometimes it does, right? So if you have interests like that, and if you are happy spending your free time learning about stuff like that, I think the best thing you can do for that is just nurture that, follow that. And your algorithm in your feeds will determine a lot of what you see. So I think over time you can curate it so that you are passively learning more. And it's not even to say that I've specifically done this on purpose, but if somebody's looking for how to do it, that's where I would think to start, which is just, you know, there's lots of really interesting, like Steve Moll, Technology Connection, Smarter Every Day. There's all these YouTubers who are essentially exclusively making educational content, and some of their stuff, if stuff appeals to you, if your stuff interests you, then you go away with a little piece of information in the back of your head that might come up later, right? And then after that, I don't know, I guess it's training yourself to make connections, building systems and models in your head that let you process stuff more effectively
and to
incorporate it together.
So that and just for not a gamer specifically, if you like actually listening to conversations like that, if you haven't been, I think you might enjoy going to conventions where a lot of panels are like that. If the convention is on in an area that you enjoy, then you're going to hear lots of people who are experts in that area talking about stuff.
Yeah.
And that's super neat. Like, it's really, and I guess that's to your point of we're just a bunch of nerds. So the stuff that we like.
We like it. Yeah.
We like it. Yeah. So I found one other thing that Joe Walton is sort of famous for is this poem, or it's a song. It's called "The Lurkers Support Me in Email."
Yeah, and that's something that I've only heard from you. So.
Oh, is it? Okay, so to me, it's pretty wild because it sort of crystallizes. There's a better term for it.
Are you looking to read that out loud?
It's supposed to be a song. Maybe I'll sing it.
I don't know. Okay, so just really quickly, I recommend a couple of YouTube channels. Okay, I'm going to recommend like a couple podcasts too, just while we're here.
All right.
Hyperfixed. We've talked about it relatively recently. It's really cool. You'll learn a little bit about the world in a really digestible way. Decoder Ring is like a pop culture breakdown stuff. They've got some really cool stuff. If you're looking for something business and founder focused, How I Built This with Guy Raz is him talking to CEOs and going through their sort of like journey. There's a lot of stuff like that. I think those are the main ones I'll recommend. I think Invisibilia has since finished, and Reply All has also finished, but like those are both quite interesting. There's lots of stuff. Sawbones, if you want to learn about medical history, is cool stuff, and most of the stuff doesn't come up.
And if you want to, all right, so if you want to learn about injustice, we've got one too. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
you're already listening to it anyway.
I don't even know how much you're learning about injustice, but
early on you were, I think. Early on we did a lot.
That's fair.
It was much more, and you can still see a lot from the footage. I think the footage is actually quite informative.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you have lurkers support me in email.
Okay, so but to me that's the idea. The idea that that sort of argument people make that, oh yeah, so there's lots of people who are too embarrassed to say it publicly have come to me in emails to say that they think I'm right. So it's to the tune of "My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean." So the lurkers support me in email. They all think I'm great, don't you know? You posters just don't understand me, but soon you will reap what you sow. Lurkers, lurkers, lurkers support me, you'll see. Off in email, the lurkers support me, you'll see. Oh, it's true, and you know they support me. There's thousands of lurkers out there. They all understand my intentions. You posters are not being fair. Lurkers, lurkers, lurkers support me, you'll see. Off in the email, the lurkers support me, you'll see. The lurkers support me in email, so why don't they post you all cry? They're scared of your hostile intentions. They're not as courageous as I. I'll skip the thing again. So one day I'll round up all my lurkers. We'll have a news group of our own. Without all this flack from you morons, my lurkers will post round my throne. So I think it's just neat. Like that kind of it. That was from 1998. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Anyways, she's still alive. Yeah. You can meet her at conventions.
She's a cool lady.
Yeah, it is. It's all neat. Mm-hmm. Wow, we've gone over time.
Yeah,
bonus.
You got a lot of extra stuff from us this week. But yeah, so to finish up, we have some people that we'd like to give a real hail and hearty thanks to. So that's all of our lovely patrons on Patreon. Mm-hmm. So a huge thank you to Michael Devries, Irvin, Ruiz, Hoshi 127, Nora Klimek, and Miguel, who are supporting us on the credited level. And as well, huge thank you to all of you for supporting us however you do. At the very least, listening to us for almost 45 minutes. Which that's a long time. If you've taken 45 minutes out of your day to hang out and listen to us, that's cool, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your support. We'll see you next time. Komoda.